Alright, let's look at zero and negative exponents. Now, first let's go over some vocabulary terms. A base is when we're talking about in a power, it's going to be the number used as a factor. Now, the exponent in a power is the number of times the base is used as a factor. Now, you'll hear us say monomial here shortly when we're talking about exponents. Now, a monomial is a number variable or a product of a number and one or more variables. So, for example, 4 right here, this is a monomial. Also, x would be a monomial. Or 3y would be a monomial, as well as 4ab would be a monomial. Now here, this 10 to the third is the whole thing considered a power. Your exponent is this little 3, and your base is going to be this 10, the larger number. Alright, so let's look at some patterns with exponents. Notice if I do 2 to the third power, that's 2 times 2 times 2, I get 8. If I do 2 to the second power, I get 4. 2 to the first power is 2. 2 to the 0 power is 1. Then 2 to the negative first is actually 1/2. 2 to the negative second is 1/4. Notice the denominators in these two. If you look, 2 to the negative first is 1/2. That denominator is 2. Same thing as the 2 to the first power, which would be 2. 2 to the negative second, your denominator is 4. And if you look at 2 to the second, the answer would be 4. So, if you notice that negative, basically, it's still 2 to the first, but it wants you to write it as a denominator under 1. Now, if you look across all three of these, 2 to the 0 power, 5 to the 0 is 1, 10 to the 0 is 1, 2 to the 0 is 1. We have a pattern here with the power of 0, where anything to the 0 power is 1. Now if you notice to the first power, 2 to the first, 5 to the first, 10 to the first, is basically your base. So here we've got 2, 5 to the first is my base 5, 10 to the first is my base 10. Again, the same thing with the 5s as it was with the 2s. 5 cubed is 125, 5 squared is 225, 5 to the first is 5, 5 to the 0 is 1, 5 to the negative first, we go up here to 5 to the first, it's 5, so look, my denominator is 5. With 5 to the negative second, I go up here to 5 squared, which is 25, and notice that 25 is my denominator. Now with the 10s, with the power of 10, if you notice 10 to the third is 1,000. That means you got your 1 and then you have 3 zeros. Now 10 to the second is 100, which means you got your 1 and 2 zeros. Notice 2 is the exponents and that's how many zeros you have. 3 is the exponent and you have 3 zeros. So if I did 10 to the fourth, I'm willing to bet it's going to be 1 with 4 zeros. Now 10 to the first, we got 1 and we got 1 0. 10 to the 0 means I just have 1 and 0 zeros, no zeros. 10 to the negative first, just like it was back here in the 5 and 2 bases, I have 10 on the bottom, which is 1 with 1 0, under my fraction as my denominator. Same thing with 10 to the negative second. Do 1 on top, and on the bottom is going to be 100, 1 with 2 zeros. Alright, let's look at some rules for our exponents. The first one we're going to do is for every non-zero number x. Basically, for every number except for 0. If I have x to the 0 power, no matter what is my base, it's always going to equal 1. Okay, so I have 115 to the 0 power, it's 1. X times y, all of that to the 0 power. And those are variables. It's still 1. Negative 4.6 to the 0 power is still 1. So no matter what you have as your base, and your power is 0, your answers, or your simplified form, is 1. Alright, next one, for every non-zero number x, again, any number for x that's not 0, if I have a x to the negative a power, that means a is just any number that's a negative number. What I'm going to do is put that as a denominator, so under 1, and then my power becomes positive. So for example, 5 to the negative second power, we're going to do 1 over 5 squared. Notice my negative exponent goes away. And we all know 1 over 5 squared is the same thing as 1 over 25. Okay, y to the negative 6. Again, to make it positive, I do 1 over, don't need that negative, 1 over y to the 6. Notice my exponent becomes positive here. Now with this one, 3x y to the negative 4th. Just the y is to the negative 4th. So remember, when I'm writing it all like this, it means 3 times x times y to the 4th. So I'm going to do 3x and then multiply it by 1 over y to the positive 4. And then that way I get rid of my negative number, or my negative exponent. Alright, so let's do some practice problems. We need to simplify these. Now, the first one, 6 to the 0 power. Like I said before, anything to the 0 power is going to be 1. Okay, that's all I have to do. Now, for number 2, I have 4 times x to the 0 power, y to the negative 2. Okay, well we know that's going to be 4 times x to the 0 power, which is 1, times y to the negative second power. Now let's write that as a positive power. That's 1 over y squared. Now we're going to multiply all this. So 4 times 1 is 4. And then I want to do 4 times y squared. And that's going to get me 4 over y squared. Because this 4 is like 4 over 1, multiply across. So here's my answer. Alright, let's look at number 3. Negative 5 x to the negative 4th. Now that negative 4th is with the x. So this is going to be negative 5 times 1 over x to the positive 4th. Notice my negative 4 goes away. Okay, so multiply negative 5 times 1 over negative 1 over x to the 4th. This is just negative 5 and then over x to the positive 4. And then there's my answer. Alright, number 4, 2/3 x times x to the negative 6th power. Alright, I'm going to do 2/3 times 1 over x to the 6. 6 becomes positive. Okay, so multiply across. 2 times 1 is 2. 3 times x to the 6 just becomes 3x to the 6th power. And there it is, simplified. Alright, last one. 1 over 4 to the negative 3rd. Alright, so if my negative is down here, okay, basically what I need to do is the negative exponent goes on top and becomes positive. I do this because this is the same thing as doing 1 divided by 1 over 4 to the 3rd power. Okay, now I need to do 1 divided by 1 over 4 to the 3rd power. Remember, when we're dividing fractions, this is like 1 over 1, so you go 1 divided by 1 over 4 to the 3rd. Remember, what you need to do is keep, change, change. I always learned it as don't ask why. Flip the second one over and multiply. So 1 times 4/3 over 1. And when you do that, basically, you get a positive 4/3. Not 4/3, but positive 4 to the positive 3rd power. So notice, basically, to make it positive, I took it from the bottom and put it on top, which is a quick and easier way. Alright, now let's do a little evaluating. Now, evaluating means kind of to solve. So I'm going to evaluate when A is 2, B is -1, and C is -3. So I will put it in for A and B. Now first we need to simplify it before I can actually put in my numbers. So this first one, I have 4 times A squared times B to the 0 power. Now remember, B to the 0 is like 1, okay? So when I simplify that down, I basically have 4A squared. Now I can put in my 2 for my A. So I've got 4 times 2 squared. 2 squared is 4. So you got 4 times 4, which is 16. And that is your answer. Okay, let's do the second one. 5A to the negative third. Let's write with positive exponents. We want to get used to it and always write with positive exponents. So that means I've got 5 times 1 over A to the third power, okay? Now, multiply across 5 times 1, that's going to give me 5A to the third power. Okay, now let's put in A. So I have 5 over A is 2, so 2 to the third power. So my 5 stays up top, 2 to the third power. 2 times 2 is 4. Times 2 is 8. So 5/8 is my answer. Okay, this next one, what we need to do first is write with positive exponents. So remember what I said, 6C to the third. Remember this is B to the negative first. Remember if it's on the bottom, to actually move it to the top, I make it positive. So I need to multiply this by B to the first. Okay? B the first is also, remember, just B. So if I multiply this out, I'm going to have 6C cubed B. Now I can put in what B and C are. So what I'm going to do is 6 times C, which is negative 3. So negative 3 cubed times B, which is negative 1. Okay, 6, first we got to do our negative 3 cubed. So negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9, times a negative 3 is a negative 27. So we got 6 times negative 27 times negative 1. Alright, so 6 times negative 27. Well, I don't know at the top of my head, so I'm going to go over here. 6 times 7 is 42. 6 times 2 is 12. Add 4 is 16. 162. That's negative. We still got to multiply by negative 1. Alright. Now, negative 162 times negative 1 is going to be a positive 162 for your answer. Alright, last one. Let's write this with positive exponents. So I'm going to have negative 2 times 1 over A to the third, and then 1 over B to the second. Alright, so that's going to give me negative 2 divided by A to the third, B to the second. Okay, A is 2. So when I'm putting in my info, I got 2 to the third power times B is negative 1. So negative 1 squared. Now 2 to the third power. 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8. So I still have my negative 2 on top. I have my 8 on bottom. Negative 1 squared is 1. So basically I have negative 2 over 8. I need to simplify that. So I should get negative 1/4 as my answer.